How's it going, everyone? Nerd Person Shooter here. So, about a month ago, I bought Death Stranding 2 on the beach at GameStop for $45. It was 50, but I used my $5 pro coupon that month in October. Was it October?
Uh?
I think it was October. I don't know. I might be mistaken. I thought it was like mid-October because, everyone said that it's a really great game. To anticipate myself, before I started Death Stranding 2, I did play through Death Stranding 1 finally. This is a game that I had for quite a few years that I never really hopped on. I had other games that I covered and stuff. I never really got around to it until now because, I mean, why would I want to play Death Stranding 2 if I'm not accustomed to the gameplay and the world of Death Stranding 1? At least in the possibility that the second game doesn't do a great job at recapping all the events and whatnot. And so I finally played Death Stranding 1 and I hated it. Gameplay wise, anyway, I fucking hated Death Stranding 1. Now, for those of you who don't know what these games are about, you play as a porter who's basically a fancy word of saying a delivery boy, Sam Bridges, who is played by Norman Reedus. You probably know him from The Walking Dead or The Boondock Saints. And it takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where you have to try to reconnect the last fragments of the United States of America. It's being renamed the United Colonies of America. You basically explore the entire United States and connect different outposts and stuff, and all the while, you have to avoid these monsters called the BTs, which are basically like spirits of the dead. It can kill them and cause this massive explosion called a void out. And these explosions are so big that they can potentially destroy the whole planet. I don't really want to say much more about the story because the thing about Hideo Kojima games is that his stories are basically like one plot twist after another. So if I feel like if I said anything more past the basic premise, I'd be spoiling things for you. So I'm not going to really talk about the story in either game in this video. But yeah, the gameplay loop of Death Stranding, at least Death Stranding 1, is deliver packages from place to place and try not to break it. There are so many different obstacles that you can just like fall over and break packages. And I did not like Death Stranding 1. Now, maybe it's partly because I played it too late, and so I didn't really have a lot of other players' stuff left behind. This game has a sort of like a co-op element to it where people can lay down ladders and, climbing anchors and stuff, ropes and bridges and stuff for you to cross, and you can make some for them to use, and it creates this bridge link that they call it between players. That part I do like, but I think it's because I played Death Stranding 1 a little bit too late that I was just kind of left by myself, and I had to like do everything myself. There were hardly any vehicles to be found, so the vast majority of the game I was fucking on foot. And this is a game that is so empty. Like it's a big open world, and there's just not a whole lot of substance within the game. There are enemies, like there are like bandit camps, but the combat in Death Stranding 1 and the stealth in Death Stranding 1 feels almost non-existent. Like it was like tacked on at the last minute. Like they made a game exclusively about delivering shit, and that's it. And then right before it came out, they're like, "Oh shit, we forgot to add enemies to this. Let's add bandits who've lost their minds and want to loot you and kill you. Let's do that. Add those in. Yes, yes, we have a combat now. We got enemies now. Yeah, there weren't even any like skill perks related to combat or stealth in the first game. It was all just like climbing and like cargo management and stuff, and it was just not what I wanted this game to be. Now, I played Death Stranding 1 for about 45 hours. 40 of those hours were spent focusing on the main story and the main objectives, and another 5 hours consisted of me just doing some other side stuff. I couldn't finish it like completely. I mean, I beat the story, of course, because I just wanted to get filled in on like the world of the series. But I couldn't bring myself to really fully complete Death Stranding 1. Like in terms of like 5-starring all the different outposts and stuff by, delivering countless packages and shit. And it had very little variety within the actual objective. It's just like recover this and bring it here, and I got really tired of it really fucking quick. But there are other aspects of that game that I really liked. I overall liked the story. I liked the characters enough. One of my favorite actors of all time, Mads Mikkelsen, was in it. He was awesome. He played like one of the bad guys, kind of. He's more of like an anti-villain, but you fight him. And the music is great. The music in both these games are awesome. I'll just say it right then and there. Hideo Kojima uses music from like these kind of like indie rock bands that are really good, actually. I've actually become fans of these bands now thanks to these games. Low Roar and what was the other one? I think it's like Woodkid. Is that the other band that he uses a lot? Anyway, yeah, these are both really great, indie kind of like alternative rock bands that I've become a fan of thanks to these games. So, didn't like playing Death Stranding 1, but I still respected it a little bit. It was a very original world with overall decent writing, but could have been better in basically every department. But the gameplay especially was flawed and very repetitive, oftentimes extremely frustrating and tedious, and I feel like it didn't give you enough tools to really use to make these moments more manageable. When I finished Death Stranding 1, that really worried me, because I did not want to play that same game again if Death Stranding 2 was the same fucking thing, the same bullshit. And it wasn't. This game, Death Stranding 2, is one of the most improved sequels I've ever played. Like, from the first game to the second, it's one of the most improved video games I've ever played. I have to give a huge level of praise for Kojima actually putting in the work to make it this much better. To listen to feedback, to listen to everyone's complaints about the first game, and, kind of like redesign Death Stranding 2. I wrote a list of things this game does, at least in my opinion, does better than Death Stranding 1. I have it on a piece of paper here on my lap. And so I'm just going to go down and, speak, if not from the heart, then from the list, because I had to write some stuff down, otherwise I probably would have forgotten. So the first thing I wrote was that this game, I feel, has more mature writing, and better pacing, better story pacing. Even if the world wasn't quite as, like, impactful as the first game. And this is something that some sequels do suffer from, no matter how great it is. But I find that the character writing was way better in this one. I don't want to throw shade at Kojima for his writing style and his kind of like eccentric, things that he puts in the games. And even though this game still has a lot of that kind of like nonsense, I feel like it's more dialed down, and it's more of a self-restrained work from him, which honestly I really admire. I'm trying not to spoil anything, of course, but I just overall I think the characters are written better. I think there's more motivation in the game, with the characters, especially from the main character Sam Bridges. I feel that his character was less of like, oh, I really don't want to be here right now. Fuck America. Which, by the way, this doesn't take place in America. It starts off in Mexico, and it's a fairly small map in Mexico. It's like half of the Mexican country, and then the rest of it takes place in the huge continent that is Australia, and that's where the vast majority of the game takes place. And I have to applaud the art direction a bit. Yeah, in this game, these countries actually look like the countries that they're trying to represent. Mexico is kind of like deserty. It's got cactuses and stuff. Australia is all over the place. I mean, Australia is fucking whacked. It's got like canyons and swamps, Crocodile Dundee type shit. Got a little bit of everything, which I love. And that's one thing I remember not liking about Death Stranding 1 is that America didn't really look like America. It just looked like a blob of moss and rocks. They had the Rocky Mountains, and it was just a snowy single mountain. Like, I mean, obviously these games are like way scaled down. Otherwise, it would have been like a million-hour long game if these games were actually scaled accurately. But I think that's one thing that I kind of understand why these games are kind of slow paced is that he made it so that it really does feel like you're exploring like a destroyed continent, which I appreciate. But I mean, it doesn't really help if there's still not much there. Death Stranding 2 is way bigger, and yet it feels more dense. It feels like there's more stuff in it. There's more outposts. There's more communication. There's more just branching paths that can kind of like interconnect with like different parts of the continent. And it really helps when you're trying to do different orders at once so you can plan your routes better, I think, in Death Stranding 2 than you can in Death Stranding 1. Overall, it's just way better designed, in my opinion, Death Stranding 2. And the gameplay has been completely overhauled. This one definitely has more emphasis on combat and stealth. It actually feels good to fight enemies. It feels engaging. Even the stealth is really engaging. The level of quality here on the gameplay aspect is about the equivalent of like Metal Gear Solid 5. You know how amazing the gameplay was in that game? The gameplay in this one is maybe not as great, but definitely up there. And there are actual skill trees related to combat and stealth now. Thank God. Vehicles are way more present. I've spent the vast majority of my time traveling in a truck. And what's even more useful, on top of being able to carry an insane amount of cargo, there are different components that you can attach to the trucks, like cannons to fight off enemy bandits, or a sticky cannon that can use to actually snatch onto like lost cargo or lost equipment and stuff for you to snag for yourself. So it was so useful, and it made the gameplay loop, which, to be fair, the gameplay loop is still there. It can still be a little like repetitive. That's just Death Stranding, But in the sequel, they added these things to make it way more fun and approachable and engaging and immersive. I was hardly ever bored with Death Stranding 2. There was always something that I wanted to do. Like unlike the first game, I didn't feel obligated. I also loved using motorcycles. If I didn't have that much cargo I needed to carry and I wanted a faster vehicle, I would use a motorcycle. The graphics and audio are obviously better. It's a really beautiful game. The sound design is incredible. I spent a massive amount of time on this game. I did basically everything. I finished the game. I got all 5 stars on every single outpost. The objectives are way more varied. There are orders where you have to eliminate a bandit camp or recover something that was stolen from those bandits. There's just way more variety in gameplay and substance that I never really got bored or tired of playing the game. I got tired of Death Stranding 1 like halfway through just trying to do the story. In here, I got the Platinum Trophy. I did literally everything. I even did things that I didn't need to do to get the Platinum Trophy, like build every single freaking road around Australia. Like all around Australia. I rebuilt the entire road system. I rebuilt all 3 monorail lines. I wanted to do these things. Like I actually felt like I wanted to reconnect the whole continent this time around because the gameplay was just so much more interesting. This is one of those games that as a sequel, it just checks all the boxes of what the first game failed on, it fucking delivered. So yeah, I spent only 45 hours on the first game, and on this game I spent like 115 hours. Yeah, I played this one almost 3 times as much as I played the first Death Stranding game. I don't ever want to look back on Death Stranding 1. That shit is dead to me. I mean, granted, I don't really feel the need to look back on this one either because I literally finished everything. And I don't think there's any DLC planned, unfortunately, so yeah, I'm probably done with Death Stranding 2 just because I literally have nothing else to do in it. But I found it to be immensely satisfying throughout. Now, do I think it's perfect? No. Do I think it's game of the year? Not quite. I do have a few complaints here and there. The gameplay loop itself can be, depending on what orders you choose to do, can feel a little monotonous. That's just the nature of these games. It's kind of like you kind of have to deal with it. But the physics can still be a pain. Like the physics it's still very, like you gotta be really careful walking down a hill or else, or like a mountain, or else you're gonna fall down and break all your stuff. But once again, that's kind of the nature of Death Stranding. It's a glorified walking simulator, only this time it's more streamlined with the vehicles and way more equipment to use. There are a lot of times when I got my truck stuck on like the smallest fucking rock. Like I couldn't move my truck just because there was like a rock underneath like my truck. I was like, what the hell? Like, come on, like this shit should just like knock the fucking rocks over. And it's funny because it allows you to like jump your vehicles like a low rider, except like actually hopping off the ground, and it looks freaking silly. There were a lot of times when I had to do that, and it just looked stupid, but it never got to a game breaking point. At least I was able to always at least get my vehicle out of getting stuck. I never had an instance where it got so bad that I had to like load the last save or anything. Uh, Maybe other people had a worse experience with it. I don't know. That can be really annoying. Again, the physics going against the player. The physics are fighting the player. The physics are just as much of an enemy as the BTs and the evil bad bandits. This is less of a nitpick and more of an actual complaint just because it can be really counterintuitive. I hate how your personal lockers aren't shared throughout every outpost and every safe house. So if you leave something behind at like the one outpost, you can't recover it at another one. Think of it like the item box from the old Resident Evil games, where like all your items you can recover from any item box. In Death Stranding 2, it's more realistic that you have to like go back to each outpost to recover whatever it is you left there. And I mean, yeah, it's more realistic, but come on, like it's just it's a waste of time, you know. It doesn't really respect the player's time. That was a problem that I had with Death Stranding 1. I guess that's the one problem I had with the first game that wasn't really resolved in the second game was the personal locker and the need to having to go back, you know, halfway across the continent. Granted, later on you can fast travel with a ship. You have a ship with your teammates on board. You know, story supporting characters and whatnot. But still, it's just come on, man. It's not necessary. Like the world itself, the world of Death Stranding itself isn't that grounded. Like, there's a lot of supernatural elements, and you know, so I don't really care about realism in these games. Like they're not really. I mean, they're kind of like fantasy games, like post-apocalyptic fantasy sci-fi. And speaking of the ship, every once in a while throughout the story, when you rest in your private room in the ship and you try to get out and continue the game, you will get ambushed by these stupid fucking quiz minigames that a certain character forces upon you. I don't know why she forces it upon you because it's not integral to the story at all. It's not urgent. It's just like weird minigames. And when you fail one of these minigames, you don't move on to the rest of the game. You respawn in your room and you have to do it again. Why? What? Why? What does this add to the main game? Now, you could argue that these weren't terribly hard. I was being an idiot. I didn't really pay much attention to them just because I wasn't interested in doing them. I wasn't like, oh, is this important? Is this what's going on here? These are just like fucking mini games that this girl, who by the way, this girl plays Yukio in the Deadpool movies. You know, the ones like Hi Wade, the Japanese girl. Yeah, that this is her, and she forces you to do this shit. It's like, what the fuck, Yukio? I just want to move on. I'll do these later. Like, let me do these later if I want to do them. Why is the game forcing me to do these? Like, I can't get out of my ship. I can't fast travel. Like, I'm stuck in this fucking loop. This quiz minigame loop. I mean, you can force it by process of elimination because each quiz only has like four like different options, but it's still a waste of my fucking time. Let me move on with the rest of the game. It only happens a few times. It only happens like 4 times, I think. No more than 5 times throughout the 80 hours that you'll play through like the main story and some of the side content. But it's really annoying, and it was a completely unnecessary inclusion. These dumbass mandatory quizzes. I'm not making this shit up, guys. I'm not fucking around with you. I'm not trolling with you. Look this shit up. It's called the name of the girl is Rainy, and just look up Death Stranding 2 Rainy quizzes, Rainy quiz solutions, and hopefully you'll find a couple people with the same complaint as me that they are unskippable. So yeah, and lastly, you know, as much as I love the story and the writing, I think the writing is even better in this game than in the first game. I think that you know the things are easier to understand than in the wacky first game where everything was more like philosophical and obscure. In this one, it's more like directed at the player and just written like a regular great video game story. As much as I love the story, I feel like this game did not do a good job at recapping all the events of the first game. And I say this with confidence because I had just finished the first game, you know? And going on to that, you know, I decided to look up like the recap because the game has like a recap option in the main menu. And all it does is give you like slideshows of like what happened in text. And it doesn't really tell you all the different plot twists that occurred that shaped like the main story as it went. It just gave you like little tidbits, like the absolute minimum of what happened. So, you know, it brings me to a tough spot where like I can't fully recommend this game just because if you didn't play through Death Stranding 1 and you didn't really remember a whole lot, you're still going to feel a little bit lost in the story and the world in Death Stranding 2. There's just so much to absorb and know about this universe, and the recap in Death Stranding 2 just doesn't cut it. You know, it doesn't really go that that deep into like the BTs and stuff and how the world is functioning, and it just I don't know. Maybe it's because I played Death Stranding 1 right before it, that when I read the recap, maybe I was overthinking things. You know, that I was remembering too much that maybe wasn't important in Death Stranding 2, but at the same time, nah, I don't know. So, you know what? I still highly recommend this game, but only if you have either already played through Death Stranding 1 or you are willing to bite the bullet and sledge through the main story of the first game, which should only take you like 35 or so hours, no more than 40 hours, just to understand all the different elements of the story, all the characters and their relationships and stuff. But if you don't want to do that, I can't really recommend this one. But I will say that I still love this game very much. I do think that it is definitely one of the best games of the year, top five even, honestly. Death Stranding 2 was everything that the first game should have been, basically. You know, this is Death Stranding at its more realized form. You know, I'm going to give Death Stranding 2 a 9 out of 10. I think it's an overall amazing game with actual great gameplay, actual substance within that gameplay, an easier to understand story, easier to relate to characters, and just overall a more streamlined, even if that means a little less nuanced, a more streamlined, a more approachable, and a more fun and engaging game all around. Now, if you're wondering what my final score for the first game would be like, I might have to give that like a 6 out of 10. Or at the very, very, very most, if I'm being really generous, like a 7 for the first game. Yeah. You know what? I'm probably going to give the first game a 6, just because I fucking hated the gameplay that much. But it was good in a lot of other ways. But yeah, guys, that's my thoughts on Death Stranding 2. I was really surprised about how much I loved this. This might be my favorite Hideo Kojima game to date. But that's not really saying much because I was never really a big fan of Metal Gear. So, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be one to say that. But anyway, guys, yeah,